Well, good morning, Beaumont. Yes, it's another fabulous day. Yeah, I know it's cold, but it's a fabulous day. Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, however, are not reacting well to Donald Trump's presidency. It was perhaps predictable, but on the day when the newly inaugurated President Donald Trump used his new powers to pardon many of those that were swept up in the scam on January the 6th back in 2021, the Democrat duo tried to use that event to keep Trump from returning to office, put him in jail where he could easily be killed and be done with it. But what exactly is going on? I mean, do these two frauds really think they can fool us? Anyway, appearing on MSDNC Inside with Jen Psaki, California Senator Schiff claimed that Trump's move was a terrible way to begin his second term. In a post on social media, meanwhile, Pelosi said Trump's action was an insult to our justice system. Well, in their case, the injustice system, because there was never any justice handed out in the last 4 years. This goes all the way back to the days of Bill Clinton, when Bill Clinton packed the FBI with crooks and criminals, Marxists, leftists, that would do the bidding of the Marxist leftist government and ignore the Constitution. This is something that really has to be considered. But Schiff said it is a grotesque display of his new power as president to pardon these 15 or 1,600 people. Now, once again, I want to remind you, I was there on January the 6th. Thankfully, not prosecuted, but I was there and very close to the action. And of course, I put up a really good hour-and-a-half long video on YouTube for which I got a 6-month suspension. But this is not grotesque. Let me tell you what grotesque is. Grotesque is Joe Biden pardoning his entire family because they're all involved in criminal enterprise. Grotesque is Joe Biden pardoning all of these mass murderers, horrible, horrible people that have done unspeakable things, and yet they get a pardon. We don't know why. So, hard to imagine that we were sitting in the Capitol, the site of the attack, and hours later, the man who incited that attack has pardoned the people who participated in that attack, said Adam Schiff. You got to remember, Adam Schiff's not really worth the Schiff that he's made of. Actually, it's hard to imagine that being an inveterate liar like Adam Schiff, don't forget Adam Schiff came out and said what Donald Trump allegedly did in that Ukraine phone call. The entire thing was made up baloney because Donald Trump released the entire phone call, and then you could tell the Schiff was lying. Schiff never thought that would happen, by the way. So even in Democrat upper echelons, ripe with liars, Adam Schiff stands out over the years. He has helped foster the Russian collusion hoax. Remember, he said he had all that evidence for Russian collusion. And then there's Nancy Pelosi's select committee, and it was very select. They only allowed Marxists in on that deal, or people that had financial interest in Ukraine, like perhaps Liz Cheney. That was all that was allowed. There were no real Republicans on the committee. And when the real Republicans were offered up, Nancy Pelosi turned them down. Kind of like she turned down the 10,000 National Guard troops that Donald Trump said, let me get you some troops in here because there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. Nancy Pelosi turned that down. So Schiff has received his own pardon from the outgoing President Joe Biden for his work on that committee, literally the same day that Donald Trump was sworn in. For the record, Schiff said that pardon's unnecessary. But it's a good bet that he's glad he got it. On the other hand, Nancy Pelosi did not get a pardon, and Donald Trump did mention that she may have committed some criminal acts, and therefore she may be looking at some real jail time when this goes forward. The former House Speaker was absolutely the architect of the January 6th committee, and she was the architect of what happened that day. And what they're going to find out is that there were more than 200 FBI and CIA insurgents in that crowd, and they were there to start trouble and cause problems. They had infiltrated the Proud Boys, and they'd infiltrated the Oath Keepers. And the president of the Proud Boys and the president of the Oath Keepers are both personal acquaintances of mine, and they are both superior, high-quality, excellent people. So neither one of them should be in jail, by the way. They are currently, but maybe they might be out in the next day or so. It's shameful that Donald Trump decided to make it his top priority, the abandonment and betrayal of the police officers who put their lives on the line to kill Ashley Babbitt, even though she was a little girl, she was unarmed, and she was stuck in a window. that most people couldn't have gotten through. So we have an unarmed little girl stuck in a window. There are police behind her. There are police in front of her. And they elected to shoot her dead. That would have been of Lieutenant Michael Byrd, a man who was not even born in America, a man who swore that he would kill Trump supporters. And that's exactly what he did. Hopefully, that crime will get punished, because I don't think he got a pardon. Throughout Donald Trump's first term, Nancy Pelosi, a former underwear model, I might add, was the highest-ranking member of a party that made abandonment and betrayal of police officers its top priority. It wasn't Republicans who were out there trying to defund the police. It wasn't Republicans that were supporting Black Lives Matter protesters that were destroying American cities. And as for the peaceful transition of power, she was the leader of the party that has sought by every means to use the power of the deep state to prevent Donald Trump from being successful in his first term. Though, as you know, it mostly failed because Donald Trump was wildly successful in his first term. I have documented more than 1,000 amazing things that Donald Trump got done in spite of the adversity of the Democrats and half of the Republican Party. But it wasn't just the Russia collusion investigation that was corrupted by all of the criminals in the FBI. Pelosi's Democrats engineered Trump's all-but-forgotten first impeachment in 2019 over the military aid to Ukraine. And then, of course, they weren't satisfied. They came back for a second impeachment. Both of them failed. This is not too surprising because we happen to know that Democrats are mostly incompetent and incapable of doing anything. So they spent billions of taxpayer dollars going after Donald Trump, but were unsuccessful on every level. The fact that Donald Trump's supposed crime stemmed from the now well-established fact that Joe Biden, Hunter's son, was the bag man for a global influence peddling operation where the Biden name was what they were selling, along with you and I. That just makes Pelosi's effrontery even worse. If her social media post was an attempt to gin up some kind of resistance that the progressives mounted for Donald Trump's first term, immediate responses have been somewhat disappointing. For instance, over on X, Ms. Pelosi said, "The president announced pardons and commutations of sentences for all those who violently attacked the Capitol and law enforcement officers on January 6th. The president's actions are outrageous and an insult to our injustice system and the heroes who suffered the physical scars." Well, Robert Cooper replied to that. He said, "It's interesting that Pelosi doesn't care about the 49 federal USPP officers injured on May the 1st, 2020 in Lafayette Park. How many of those violent rioters were hunted down, arrested, and thrown in prison?" Well, the answer is none. Martin Surveyor said, "Are we really going to keep this performance outrage thing going?" And Downtown Fairy, I don't know who she is. She's kind of cute, though. She said, "Your time is coming, Nancy. We all know what you did. The stain of it will mark your children and your grandchildren. You are leaving them a terrible legacy." Well, Pelosi and Schiff may be in different spots on the career path. I mean, let's face it, at 84, and she's kind of losing a step. She's well past the retirement age. But at 64, well, Adam Schiff is still in his prime, so to speak. They both have more than party membership in common. Both are shameless liars. Both are willing to destroy the United States in order to take care of their own personal interest. Both will be known to history better for their theatrical, dishonest opposition to Donald Trump than for any achievements that they made. And their statements on Monday, which amount to meltdowns by a man and a woman whose contrivances against political opponents have come to naught, made the most important one clear. They're both frauds, and they're not fooling anyone except for those few people who have chosen to be fueled already or fooled already. So, thanks to Joe Saunders at the Western Journal. Now this. Despite what the establishment desperately tries to tell you, Donald John Trump is hardly the monstrous dictator that they've tried to paint him as. In fact, there's an argument to be made that Trump is actually a rather magnanimous, forgiving, and sort of a grandpa. Far from the characterization of the orange man evil that we've been listening to. But look at some of his recent moves. Trump actually never investigated or brought any charges against Hillary Clinton, and she is a crook of the first magnitude. Don't forget, she was also trying to bring in a bunch of underage children from Haiti for her own personal enjoyment. But Donald Trump actually brought fierce rivals like the new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, a.k.a. Little Marco, if you will, into his establishment. Probably Secretary of State's a good place for him because, let's face it, our State Department has been an absolute cesspool of leftist, Marxist, anti-Americanism for, well, hundreds of years, going all the way back to Thomas Jefferson. So, heck, he might even be on good terms with former Presidents Joe Biden and Barack Obama. I mean, maybe not, but you can see that he treated them well when he met them. Trump simply doesn't seem like the type to harbor unnecessary grudges, unlike, say, Joe Biden. But if Trump does hold a grudge against you, well, you better buckle up because it's going to get rough. One such target of Donald Trump's ire is none other than former National Security Advisor John Bolton. I mean, Bolton hates a guy like Donald Trump who doesn't want to get into any wars, who would like to find a peaceful way to solve some of these problems. The relationship would worsen and eventually fray beyond repair when Bolton, after being ousted, put out a highly critical book that lambasted Donald Trump in an order entitled Holding Former Government Officials Accountable for Election Interference and Improper Disclosure of Sensitive Government Information. Trump took specific aim at a number of issues, and only one man was called out by name for what he actually did. The national security was clearly damaged by the publication of classified information. Former National Security Advisor John R. Bolton published a memoir for monetary gain after he was fired from the White House in 2019. The book was rife with sensitive information drawn from his time in government and information that should not have been put out for the general public. The memoir's reckless treatment of this sensitive information undermined the ability of future presidents to request to obtain candid advice on matters of national security. Is it because Bolton technically was on Trump's team, unlike Obama or Biden? Or is it because Bolton is a war hawk and Donald Trump doesn't like wars? Whatever the answer is, it's clear that Bolton has drawn a genuine and unforgivable scorn from Donald Trump. And ladies and gentlemen, that is hard to do.
You have a choice, and you chose Freedom 1300.